So, welcome to the Recovery Matters podcast. We have a very special guest today. Tara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Tara Moreno-Wallen, and I am the founder and executive director of Serenity House Communities. I'm also the co-owner of Green Terra Holistics, which is a business that I own with my husband. I'm also a person in long-term recovery, and that includes not only substance use disorder, but codependency and trauma as well. But I'm a mother. I have two children, and I have a cat and a dog too. So.
So, there's a lot there to unpack. Let's start with Serenity House. What is that?
So we're a recovery community organization, and we're located in the heart of Flint, Michigan, where we've been doing that work for about 7.5 years now.
I know a lot of people have watched the Recovery or listened to the Recovery Matters podcast. Well, let's hear you define what a recovery community organization is. What do you do? What's a recovery community organization?
So it's essentially made up of people with lived experience, which is what makes us unique and sets us apart from the rest. We don't do clinical, we help the next person out of the fires.
Beautiful. I love that. Um, like I said earlier, this is a Recovery Matters podcast. Tara, I'm interested to know if you have a matter about recovery that's on your heart that you would like to talk about first and foremost.
Uh, I think that the trauma piece is something that we often bypass or overlook when we start to peel back the layer of our problems or our issues. For me, substance use disorder recovery wasn't enough. I needed to go deeper. I needed to go deeper into my codependency, in the relationships, the multiple failed relationships that I had throughout my life. And then I was able to uncover the childhood trauma, which was the root as to why I was using.
How did you discover, to use your word, that there was an underlying issue in your recovery?
Because my life just wasn't working out the way that I had wanted it to work out. And that was, in terms of relationship, trying to find healthy, well rounded, authentic relationships where I felt satisfied and the other person felt satisfied. And this isn't just romantic relationship. This is friendships, work relationships, all of the above.
What was that process like? How did that help you uncovering that? What were you able to do?
So it is an excavation of the things that you have been through in your life, and there's residual emotional aspects that have impacted the way I operate in the world. And to be able to uncover those beliefs, those thoughts, and those emotions that keep me in a cyclical pattern that I don't like, something I don't like,
Hmm.
right? Um, and I believe that reality is God. So whatever's showing up in your reality is really you. I don't believe anything is random. I believe that everything that comes into our reality is a reflection or a facet of who we are, whether we want to believe it or not. Sometimes those shadow aspects or those unsightly aspects we want to repress and deny, and we want to keep them in the subconscious. So, again, that subconscious, if we can get access to it and begin to bring those aspects into the light, then we can be whole, whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Um, well, healed, at a healing place where you feel satisfied.
Wow, I love what you just shared. Um, now that I'm 34 plus years in recovery, I've framed my recovery journey as a journey to self awareness and always more and more self awareness that you can always keep uncovering things and have realizations about. I'll just speak for myself about how I respond. And sometimes my responses aren't aligned with what actually happened. Why am I getting angry that the dog wants to go for a walk with me? I mean, that's why I got the dog. And I was able to uncover some things recently about why I was. And it was me rooted in fear that I was actually afraid of how much I loved the dog and how much the dog loved me. And I knew that there's a finite time with a dog, right? And I didn't want to lose the dog. So there was childhood stuff, trauma associated with even losing the dog. So, and that's 30 plus years in recovery for me to really say, even have the insight to go, why am I getting angry that the dog wants to go for a walk with me? And that's what I love about recovery is uncovering those things. And I think you've probably hinted at that there's times where you'll have to do something other than just working your traditional program of recovery. You'll have to add other threads or colors to your recovery to continue the journey of self-awareness.
Yeah, and that's what holistic recovery is about. Looking at our recovery from a whole person perspective, mind, body, and spirit, getting into that shadow work. And Dr. Young was, I mean, he's one of our fathers of the 12-step program. And if we delve into his work and really see what he was, teaching, it's like this kind of work, especially the shadow, it's like 12, like a fourth and a fifth step on steroids, I call it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're excavating and you're really asking these questions about what makes me do the things that I do. And there's always an answer, right? And it's rooted either in this lifetime or even another.
hmm We have recently launched an advanced academy for recovery coaches. And I don't know if I'd frame it in the terms of shadow work, but I think that's what it is because it's more about getting each individual coach to dig, excavate. You use that term. I really appreciate that term because to me, I'm like a vessel, right? And I created this container over my life. And now in recovery, I've examined what I'm putting in the container and how clean my container is. And a lot of this is scrubbing the container so I have room to fill it with the things I want to fill it with.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the banner in the back, and it's the chakras associated with Reiki work. And I see that you've done a lot with Reiki. Anything you want to share about the importance of Reiki in your recovery and in your practice?
Absolutely. So Reiki was one of the biggest reasons that I found to help to get me to the place that I have wanted to be in my life. I had no awareness around the energetic bodies when before that. I had no idea really what a chakra was or what a meridian was. Eastern medicine, I was very much trapped in the Western medicine mindset, going to doctor after doctor, trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and then consequently getting a prescription for a medication. And before I did find Reiki, I was heavily medicated. And through this process of learning and working within the energetic realms, I've been able to heal at such an amazing level in terms of the light to be able to. I mean, I'm 45 years old, right? So, and when you look at and you're like, really, like, because of the energy work. It's a myriad of things, but it's really to cultivate that light and to honor it and to continuously self-examination, increasing awareness. With the Reiki, I was attuned in 2013, and then I started teaching not too long after that. And I was teaching something that was different than the traditional Reiki, which is called Usui Reiki. So I was teaching really mind, body, and spirit. And I was getting into things like gut health and the microbiome and how to eat for healthy bacteria in the body. You know, we are made up mostly of bacteria and viruses, actually. So really getting into that physical aspect, getting into the meditation aspect as well too. Like mindfulness, awesome, like that's great. But there's also, meditation with mantra, which is also called transcendental meditation. There's analysis meditation. So these things that we previously talked about with the excavation is, having a container within the mind where we can bring up these things so that we can, begin to unravel why we do the things we do. So all these things, many more crystals, we talk about the shadow work, the inner child work, and how addiction, codependency, and trauma are all related. So I developed a program called Recovery Reiki, in which I trademarked a few years ago, and I wrote a manual and a workbook, and I do trainings on the modality.
So if you wanted to get trained in Recovery Reiki or take your course, how would somebody do that?
So they would reach out to me through the Green Terra website. So we have that's my LLC, and it's greenterraholistics.com. I'm currently training a cohort right now, and just watching people connect the dots. And every time I do a training, it's like I get to see like these light bulbs go off like often, and it's like, and that's my fuel to keep doing what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is not easy whatsoever by any means, but that's the fuel that I'm reminded why I do what I do.
Hmm. Well, when you spoke about it, you definitely lit up. So I know that resonates with you. Um, we see you now before the camera. You said you're 45. You have what I would say an ageless face. You could be anywhere from like 20 to like 80, and I mean that in a compliment because you just radiate who you are. Were you always like this? Talk about like what it was like growing up for you and the person you were then.
So, as a child, even though I grew up in a home that had domestic violence, drug use, mental health issues with one parent, I still I still had a lot of laughter, and I still made the best out of the situation. But I found in my teen years, that's when things kind of started to unravel for me. And that's when my father left my home.
Uh,
Um, and I was 14. So I was already at that very sensitive, stage in a
mhm.
girl's life. And it was just like all chaos ensued in the home. And it was me, my sister, and my mother. And I started drinking, smoking marijuana, and then I was able to move through those years and still stay in school and still get the grades. And I was accepted to Michigan State University when I was 17. And that's when the wheels, as my husband says, really began to fall off. And, but the interesting thing is I was still able to get my degree and graduate in 2000 from a major university like Michigan State. But that's when my addiction really took hold of me. And it was a combination of cocaine, designer drugs like ecstasy, Special K, uh, GHB, things of that nature. I was into the rave culture back then. Um, and then after Michigan State, I tried to use my degree. I have a degree in telecommunications and film. So I wanted to go out to Los Angeles. I wanted to make music videos because I had been a dancer and cheerleader throughout school and for my teen years, early childhood. So yeah, so I just you know uh went through those transformative times that addiction brings to us. It wasn't until the birth of my daughter that I would have enough pain and suffering that I would finally have my knees hit the ground and say, okay, like here is this hole, this dark place that I've dug out for myself. Here is the mountain in front of me. Am I ready to climb the mountain? And then I did, and it
Hmm.
started with AA.
Talk a little bit about your bottom in traditional terms, or your transition from active use into recovery? What happened?
So I was in family court with my daughter. I had given birth and I had postpartum depression that was undiagnosed. And after 3 months of her being born, I went to a psychiatrist and they put me on Klonopin. And after I was on the Klonopin, I had a relapse. And no one told me that this medication triggers the same part of the brain that alcohol does. So I was out drinking and then the cocaine. And then her father immediately, which he had already, I believe he had already had plans to do this because we were in a very dysfunctional, codependent, abusive relationship anyway. He went straight and he got an attorney. And that was the beginning of my downfall. After 2 years of family court, I finally went to rehab. And when I was in rehab, they finalized permanent custody to go to him.
And that's where your recovery started once you got into the rehab?
About a year after that, I tried to die. So I lived a risky lifestyle, using dealers, walking the streets. And then I had an experience in Estes Park, Colorado.
Hmm.
And I bathed in the glacier water and I climbed the mountains. And I think it was the first time that I really felt like some sort of spiritual presence that said, you need to go home and you need to go to rehab. You need to get sober. It's time. And I did. And that was in October of 2007.
There's so many similarities to my story, but first and foremost, it's the birth of my daughter back in 1987 that was one of the inciting incidents that propelled me to recovery too. So, but I love the way you said, um, "Am I ready to climb that mountain?" And that has a special meaning to me too, as well. So, um, yeah, I've been climbing ever since, and it's pretty cool. The joy is in the journey. And I also started in 12-step recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous too, even though I was cocaine and other drugs had brought me to my knees. But that's where I found wisdom and people that had been on the journey for quite a while, had the light in their eyes, and I just knew I wanted what they had. And so they really wrapped their arms around me, and here I am almost 35 years later. So, always grateful, always grateful. And if you don't mind me asking, what's the relationship with your daughter like today?
It's amazing. So we're going to go and we're going to dinner tomorrow. And I'm going to teach her how to open up a credit card. And we're going to talk about some of these things that we actually talked about today. So she's 18 now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
What has changed since you found recovery in your attitude and your character, if anything?
I have been probably about 30 different versions of myself.
That's good.
It is good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm constantly evolving. So, and I'm really committed to the healing path and you know, to making my light as bright as I possibly can. That nurturing of the spirit within us. So, I was just in the mirror. I was looking in the mirror today and talking to my husband about, you know, um, my aging and how I was looking at pictures of myself when I was 30, and although I still, people say like, you look like you're in your 30s, right? And I look in the mirror and it's like, yeah, but I have this wisdom and this maturity that happens when you're able to go through things in your life and you know maintain some sort of center. And there's this maturity that happens in the woman, right? And there's an initiation that happens. um, and I find that a lot of women are still trapped in being girls
Hmm.
because we don't have a proper initiation for for our, um, for us. So, um, eh, I like who I am. I, can look in the mirror and smile and, really love myself, love my body, love the things that have been given to me as a gift. Um, yeah, I like who I have become, that who I've set out to become. I've become who I've always wanted to be.
Yeah, you always you're sending me down these thought trails, which is really, I love that. And the trail I went down was I have three daughters, and they're 35, 26, and 17. And that first daughter was the one that propelled me into recovery, right? Her birth. And I was thinking about, have they ever had any type of rite of passage or ritual to turn from a girl into a woman like you're? I don't know. I think it's a great question to ask them, how they think about that. So, anyway, thank you for that. I hadn't thought about that. What would be a rite of passage or a ritual that you would see or welcome?
So for me, when I would hit certain very difficult parts, and like for me being the executive director and the founder of Serenity House, I mean, when we're dealing with people in recovery who have trauma, we go through these kind of the squeezing out, squeezing through these opportunities to be able to lean in to the uncomfortability, to lean in to those emotional experiences. And those are the transformative kind of passages that a woman can use one
Hmm.
way to be able to move into, because what would a girl do, right? She'd gossip, right? She'd do these, girl like behaviors. But what would a woman do?
Hmm.
Asking yourself those questions. I think that unfortunately, this is the process that we have right now. We don't have these rites of passage like our ancestors had. And I believe that's the breakdown. One of the breakdowns of our society is that we don't have a transition for the 8-year-old that becomes the older child, or the 13-year-old that becomes a teenager. We don't have the transition, 17 to 18. We have graduation, right? But I mean, what about our emotional? What about our mental thoughts about these transitions that happen within the human? And what happens within the family?
Hmm.
Too often I find myself at being a mother that I still will treat my child like they are younger than they are, rather than who they are and how they've transitioned into this next phase of their development.
Yeah, I like that too. We have a piece in the Recovery Coach Academy where we have a choice to treat people like an object, a recipient, or a resource. And many lights go on when parents say, I've been treating my kids like an object, telling them what to do and expecting them to do it, instead of treating them like a resource, that they're the best resource on their own lives, to say, what is it you would like to do? How would that work out for you? How can I help you? Do you see how your actions are affecting others' opinions? Whatever it may be, instead of asking questions. And I love that you've discovered that. The other part too for me is, um, you were talking about the rights for the rite of passage for women or girls. And I think about it for my boys. I have two boys too, so I have five kids. And I think about my own rite of passage, and I can't even really think if there was one, And I've heard this talked about before too. Maybe getting your driver's license, maybe like the right to vote, the first time you vote, maybe, the first time you drink legally, I don't know. But there aren't anything like to say and we've lost a lot of that too. Great.
Yeah, I think there's a grieving that has to happen too when you lose that past version of self,
Hmm.
right? So we don't honor as a society as well anymore. And consequently, I think that's why, many are getting sick with lung diseases, because lungs, according to Eastern medicine, hold grief.
Oh, wow. That's profound. So yes, you've reinvented yourself at least 30 times, so, it's that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you this question because as I contemplate moving into my next phase, transition into my next phase of my life, what are like 4 or 5 descriptive words that you would how would you describe yourself today?
I would say that I am a person of integrity,
Hmm.
that I am a person that has um, humility. That took a long time to get there.
Hmm.
I have wisdom. I do. Tenacity. How about
Hmm.
that?
I like it. So let me share, and I like the values, like the qualities you consider yourself. But as I move into retirement, I came across 4 A words that I was kind of just writing. I journal a lot and write things in this unlined book. And I came up with 4 A words that I'm still an adventurer. I want to be more of an author, even though I've published a book. I want to write more. I want to be an artist, which is I see myself having a studio, which I've never had before, to create whatever they may be, oils, paints, sketches. I don't know yet, but I just see myself in there. And I want to be an athlete. Even that sounds strange at 63, but I want to take care of my body. I want to be physically fit so I can still move and do the adventure things. Any of those resonate with you or any way you would describe yourself?
I think all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I am a photographer. Before I moved into this, I had a business. I capture people. Um, so I just had an exhibit through Families Against Narcotics where I photographed people who are in recovery against murals that are all over our city, from muralists from across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Colors, the color scheme. I watched people, they were brought to tears through this exhibit. And that really ignited that artist in me, because it's not something I do, because I work a lot, right? And but I am nurturing that. Um, I have been an athlete my whole life. And, I ran track, dance, cheerleading. Later in life, I got into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, mixed martial arts, um, and CrossFit. I've always lifted weights. And then now I'm into yoga.
Mm-hmm.
So yoga is, and that's not just physical, that is, the whole person and the breath, linking the breath with the body, the mind, the body connection. So athleticism is something I resonate with. And then adventure. I I've always been, since I've been a small child, always climbing the trees, always taking those excursions in the woods, spending hours upon hours just by my favorite tree. Um, and then, most recently in my life, traveling internationally. So Costa Rica is one of my favorite countries. We've spent some time there. I brought my children there. And I've been doing a lot of traveling with these different conferences now. So, I went out on a limb and I was like, I should apply for this for the CCAR conference, and I was like, yeah, cool. So these are that adventure, right, that
Mm-hmm.
I've been seeking in my work realm. And what was the other one that you said? Artist, athlete, adventure,
Author, author.
author. And I am an author. So
Mhm.
writing has been the core. Since I've been 8, I've been writing poetry. Um, and I got my master's degree from University of Michigan in composition and rhetoric.
Wow.
So yeah. Um, and then I have my book, which is that recovery manual I was telling you about. So
There you
this is
go.
the manual, and then this is the workbook.
How cool. Congratulations. I know it's not easy to put that together for sure. And the
Very
other,
different.
and I also said the author would lead itself in my next phase to another A, not the word everybody's thinking, no, advocate. It would be that I'm still an advocate for recovery. I always have been, resonated with me for the last 24 years. And I feel that I'll be able to be I'll be more freed up now that I'm not tied to CCAR, the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery. My next phase, I'll be more freed up to write about some issues I feel strongly about. So, yeah, she's curious now. I got
Yep.
our curiosity thing going. um, Tara, is there anything else you'd like to add about your recovery or your work or anything that we haven't covered?
Um, you know, I think that this journey of healing is, I think it's getting supercharged right now. And as a society, as a whole world, we are undergoing this transformative time, in which many spiritual texts, many religious texts have talked about. And I'm not talking just about this idea of the world's ending or brimstone and fire. But what I'm saying is that there is an invitation, and we are being invited to be able to mine down into who we are and to excavate those things that are blocking the light from shining from within us. And this is a massive awakening that is happening, um, at a grand scale, and we all get to participate in it, whether we like it or not.
Mm. Man, that is so cool because for years I've talked about like I'm the Pink Floyd child, that I had built the wall around me, and my whole recovery has been a process of removing the wall so that I could let the light shine into those shadow places, into the dark areas, all that, and become more self-aware. Talked about that for years, so that aligns exactly with that. Um, you talked a little bit about multiple pathways of recovery conference. If people wanted to join us, what could they expect to hear from you?
So we'll talk about holistic recovery, um, as a whole pathway. So we'll go through all the different pathways that can be defined as a holistic recovery pathway. And I know you've got singing bowls out there. I know you've got, a myriad of different things that would kind of fit under,
Mhm.
um, the whole of holistic recovery. But we'll be talking about those things, about, what it means to get into things like energy work and the chakras and Eastern medicine, and how that pathway can, um, help you to be the best version of yourself. And I think that's what we're all striving for in recovery. It's like we want to be better people. We want that, and I'll talk about that.
Oh, thank you, Tara. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Punta Gorda.
Thank you for creating this platform for different voices to be heard around our nation. I know that CCAR has been instrumental in, what we've been doing here, in Michigan, and I really respect the curriculum and
Oh,
what you're
cool.
doing.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.